Hi guys, so the stuff that Airbot sent me has arrived, and the first one I'm going to look at is the Nox 2.17, which is basically this guy, and as you can see it's an all-in-one ESC and flight controller. It weighs 21 grams, so it's got a fair amount of heft to it, and the quality of this, just looking at it and feeling the weight of it, is immense. Now this all-in-one has been floating around for quite some time. There were many test versions going around, so from what I can gather in my following of the beta versions, Airbot have done a lot of testing and a lot of revisions to get this up and running and as reliable as they can do. So basically what we've got here, 4-in-1 ESC, which is BL32. It can run D-Shot 1200, and the ESCs are rated for 35 amps. So it's a full-featured full ESC that you could use in pretty much any build with any motors. The flight controller itself is an F4 with the Betaflight on-screen display. It uses the STM32411 MCU and the MPU 6000 gyro, so it's not going to be a board that's particularly susceptible to vibration. And as you can see here, the gyro itself is actually protected and sat inside some foam with this little plastic cover over it, just to protect it and stop it from getting knocked. And on the other side of the board you can remove, don't know if you can see them, you can remove the gyro with these 4 screws, so the gyro is replaceable and upgradable. The flight controller also has a barometer. It's got a 5-volt BEC with LC filter rated to 500 milliamps, and the more interesting thing is look at the amount of capacitors on this thing. The capacitors on this board are rated for 4000 UF, so you shouldn't need to add any form of external UF capacitor. Usually on my builds I will add on 680 or 320, something like that, depending on the motor I'm using. Bearing in mind this has got 4000 already built into it, you should get crystal clear video quality, and that's one of the downside of these all-in-one boards. The more that you compact and compress and shrink everything together, the more electrical noise you tend to get when you're shoving 100-120 amps through a small piece of electrical equipment. So those capacitors should really do a good job. The board itself is relatively simple. All the major wiring, bar the battery terminals which you see here, is on the bottom. So if I flip it over, so you can see they're basically all in one line, and they basically run, so on the top here you've got video in, you've got TX1 below it, you've got RX1, and then video out. You've got ground and 3.3 volts if you're using a DSM receiver. You've got ground and 5 volts. You've got TX2 and buzzer minus. You've got RX2 5 volts. Sorry, TX2 5 volts. RX2 5 volts, 5 volt LED, and then you've got at the top RC ground, 5 volts and ground. So the actual connections should be really straightforward. So basically what we would do here, connect your S-bus wire to the RC pad here, and you would basically connect, using UART number 2, and then you could connect either your telemetry or smart audio to the other UART, so it's only got 2 UARTs, which is the small downside. Although having said that, if you're like me and you don't use telemetry, I just use an XM Plus, which gives me RSSI. That's absolutely fine for me. Looking at the website, you can also, it looks like, buy a connector which slots in there by the looks of it, which basically gives you access to pretty much most of those pins on the bottom without any soldering. I haven't got one of those, and I'd rather solder anyway. So the plans for me will be to put this into some sort of quad and properly test it to see whether it works really well without a capacitor, and make sure that these ESCs are good for the 35 amp that they're stating, which, looking at it, I don't really see any issues there at all. So it's just going to be a case of deciding what quad I want to put this into, and then getting out and flying it and letting you guys know if it all works okay and if it's something worth looking at. Cheers for watching, guys. Thank you. Bye bye.